Let us begin with the design talks. First speaker addressing us would be architect Takbir Fatima. A few words about Ms. Takbir, who is also a workshop mentor, Fractals 21 Hive Mind, director as Design Aware and award-winning experimental architecture and interdisciplinary design studio in Hyderabad. Following her bachelor's in architecture from CSIIT School of Architecture and Planning, Secunderabad, Ms. Takbir went on to pursue her MArch in Architecture Urbanism from Design Research Lab, Architectural Association in London. Passionate about design research, digital prototyping and computation, Ms. Takbir has trained in tailoring and carpentry as well. She aims to work on socially relevant projects alongside mainstream architecture. She also teaches architecture and design in India and in the Middle East. Ms. Takbir was named Emerging Architect of the Year 2016 by GROE NDTV Design and Architecture Awards and Telangana Young Architect 2016 by IIE. Her workshop series named Fractals Workshop was featured in the magazine Services Reporter. She has also delivered a talk at TEDx BITS Hyderabad named My Serendipitous Journeys in Designing. Please put your hands together for architect Takbir Fatima and please come up to the stage and let's begin with our Digi talks.
Good evening. I hope you all can hear me at the back. Thank you, Sindhu Bey, and thank you, Azadi, for inviting me here. It's been a very inspiring 3 days and really invigorating. I really love interacting with the students, and it kind of gives me, renewed enthusiasm towards the profession. And also, today I think is a very inspiring day because the calendar itself tells us to March 4th. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our design processes at Design Aware. I like to call this talk open source ideas, varying ignition points in the design process. So a lot of times we get asked, where do you begin? How do you begin a design process? And we've been trained to think that there's only one single solution to any given problem. And I call this the single solution syndrome, which is the kind of way that we're trained to think in school. There's only one correct answer, and I totally do not believe in this. And I think there can be multiple answers to any given questions. So this quote really inspires me by Elizabeth Gilbert in her book Big Magic, which is about where do you get inspiration. The book kind of tries to explore the answer to the question, where do you start? So she says, don't worry about being original, just be authentic. So ideas are all over the place. There are multiple ideas floating around in the air. It's just about who and how you grab them and how you can kind of translate them into something else, something that is more substantial and something that is applicable. So I'd like to show you 5 different ideas or 5 different starting points for different projects that we've done. Design Aware is still a very kind of in its nascent stages, so we're still exploring and I hope we keep exploring till the end, but we're still in our very experimental stage. So all our projects have very different starting points, and we're always trying to figure out where to begin. So sometimes we begin with a question. So we were asked to design a mosque in 2 parking spaces of an existing old apartment building, and the mosque was supposed to cater to residents, elderly residents of the building who couldn't go to the mosque during the holy month of Ramadan. So they wanted to offer their additional prayers, and they couldn't go all the way to the mosque, so they wanted to bring the mosque into their building. So we started by asking, what is a mosque? Because the kind of look of a mosque and the kind of thing that we imagine a mosque to be, that is not something with the domes and the minarets and large open spaces. That's not something that can be confined to 2 parking spaces. So we went back to the question, what is a mosque? And then we realized that a mosque is just a ground plane to pray on and just one wall or some sort of orientation device to show you the direction. So Muslims face the Kaaba while praying, which is in Mecca. So you just need one orientation device or a wall that kind of shows you the direction of the Kaaba. So that's the bare minimum. Sorry. So this project started with the question, what is a mosque? And we answered it by saying it's just a ground plane and an orientation device. So this sound is the morning prayer, kind of wakes people up to have their food in the morning during the month of Ramadan, so that they can begin their fast. We were approached for this project just 15 days before the beginning of Ramadan. So we completed the design in 5 days and the execution in 10 days. So we didn't really have much time to kind of go through the entire different iterations of the design process. So we just looked at Islamic geometry, as well as we wanted to use something that was kind of soft material. So we looked at geometry as well as soft material, such as fabric. So we used 4-way lycra to design this mihrab wall, which is the orientation wall. And we used the help of sofa makers to kind of install this into place. So our aim was to create, because it's a very small space, we wanted to create something that is minimalistic and that is not really heavily ornamented, at the same time giving a sort of hint or a nod towards Islamic geometry. So this mihrab wall forms the main feature wall of the building. So without using too many colors, too many different materials, the focus was on soft kind of geometries, as well as the plane of light and shadow over the surface. So as you can see, it's a very tiny space. And we wanted to kind of explore what a contemporary mosque would look like. See the cross-stitch detail there. It's a very simple framework that forms a kind of complex geometry. And a little bit of unpredictability is added because the material is a stretchy material, so it kind of takes its own forms in terms of dips and tucks and caves. And the play of shadows over the surface is also quite interesting at different times of the day. So this is where we started the execution, just 10 days before our deadline. So these are the two parking spaces that we were given. It was a very old building. So we had 3 constraints in this project. One was, of course, time, the other was space, and the third was budget. So this was completely done on a charity basis, on charitable donations. So we had to work within that very tight budget. Lighting played a very important role because everything was white and kind of subdued. One day before Ramadan. And, this was on the very first day of Ramadan. People started attending the prayer. So the next place that we started from was to learn from precedent. So we were required to design an ice cream parlor. Again, a very similarly kind of proportion space that we were given. It was supposed to be an interior design project. We had to revive this existing old locally manufactured ice cream brand in Hyderabad called Melting Moments. And the brief was that they wanted a 50s diner kind of retro inspired chocolate shop look from from the Archie comics, something of this sort. So we took inspiration from this and also from the brief. So Melting Moments was an ice cream parlor which was already existing before and it had been closed down. And then they wanted to revive it and kind of reopen it and relaunch it with new branding. So we got inspired by the Rewind logo, which is also obsolete now. So we kind of took inspiration from the logo and converted that logo into three-dimensional and played around with it. And we also expanded the scope of work. So not only is it an interior design project, but we sort of pushed the boundaries and we took over the parking space and sort of added some landscape to it, the parking tiles as well. And we also sort of created a continuation with the elevation of the building. And we added this steel truss, which would let the sunlight into the building. And also, when it's raining, you could actually sit under it and enjoy your ice cream. This is a floating counter that rests completely on the glass. So we like to do a little bit of structural experiments as well. And this is the feature wall, which was again inspired by the Rewind logo. This is the logo, and we've done the branding as well. So this is the different ways that the logo gets manifested. So as you can see, we're not only working on the interiors of the building, but we're also working on the frontage, the parking space, and you will see the neighboring building also. We're kind of encroaching onto other surfaces. The roof structure as well as the facade. We not only did the design and the branding, but we also did the execution. As you can see, we gave a checkerboard flooring, and if you can see the front tread of the flooring, it has these really kind of random black and white pieces. The reason for that is to create an illusion because the side itself was sloped, so we wanted to hide that, and we created an illusion of having the same uniform height. This is a floating counter. rests completely on the glass, as you can see. That's the feature wall. And if you can see, we even painted the next door building to match the color of our interiors, to kind of expand the palette of our where we're working. And this place would function more frequently in the night. So the night lighting was really important. So we played with many different layers of light. So it would give you different kinds of effect as you turn it on, turn on different lighting schemes. And as I said, we also did the branding. This is the butterfly truss. And this has been featured in Design Detail magazine last November. The next starting point for us was let ideas evolve and mutate. It's not really a starting point, but it's about how ideas lead on to other ideas, and then you don't know where you're going, and it's kind of unpredictable. So I'd like to talk about two materials which are really interesting, and we've kind of mutated them and we've kind of applied them into different contexts and different scales. One is fiberglass. So at the AA we had a digital prototyping lab, and it was the dead of winter in London, so you can't really do much during winter. So I would spend my time in the digital prototyping lab playing around with the laser cutter. So I started designing wearables using the laser cutting machine, which we generally use for prototyping architectural projects. I was inspired by Santiago Calatrava's building and sort of designed this wearable, which is called the turning torso. The wing of a bird inspired the wing ring, and tentacles of sea life inspired the tangle bangle. So we created an entire series of this in the same material. And what's really interesting about this material is that it has this fiber optic quality to it. So if you light just one edge of it, all the edges and all the parts which are cut, they get lit and they start to glow. So then we moved on to designing lighting, which is kind of inspired by the wearables. So we designed this series of lights which has layers which are staggered, and then you can kind of just see the edges which are lighting up. So we designed this for a bowling alley. And then we were approached by Rajiv Gandhi International Airport in Hyderabad to design a business center, which is like a kiosk for information and communications, phone, internet, etc. So we used the same material. We got inspired by flight paths and the kind of ways that planes take off and land. And we traced those paths and we kind of came up with this form. The idea was that from a distance, you would only see the ads, because our client was Lakshya Airport Media Group, so they wanted the ads to be visible. And so the entire structure was something that was transparent, and then just the edges would be lit, and then when you come closer to it, you would understand what it was like. The other material is completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's called Arish, or date palm frond. This is a project that we did in Dubai. So for 420 million date palms which are dead at the end of the day are kind of find their way into landfills, so they're discarded every year, just in the UAE. This date palm, or Arish, was the traditional construction material. So in the 40s, this is how they used to live. This was their primary construction, technology, and now it's become completely obsolete in terms of construction, because you actually have buildings, it's become like a concrete and steel jungle with the Burj Khalifa and other buildings like that. So date palm frond, or Arish, is actually a very versatile kind of material, and you can kind of treat it in many different forms, and that is how they used to treat it in many different ways for structural and other performative applications. So we wanted to explore this material. At the same time, their traditional houses were built completely by the women. So the Bedouin women, or of the nomadic tribes who used to live in the desert, when they became semi-nomadic, they started to build their homes with the date palm fiber, or fronds. So one of the aims was to involve local craftswomen and learn their techniques and apply it, and kind of design something that is a little more contemporary and something that has not been done before with this material. So we designed something called Weavex, which is a series of urban installations which we pitched for Dubai Design Week, and it was selected. So we did a lot of explorations in terms of form finding, and we designed a whole series of different pavilions, one of which is now has been installed for Dubai Design Week at Dubai Design District at a place called The Block at the waterfront. You can see the Burj Khalifa in the background there. So initially it was supposed to be a temporary structure, but now it's become a permanent installation there. And when it comes to sustainability, we also have to think about the future life of any structure that we create. So also it's been featured in Design Detail recently. So what we did was, the palm fronds are the ones that are used for the structure. So what happens to the leaves? That was a question that was kind of burning in our minds, because we wanted to figure out a way to use the leaves as well. So we proposed a workshop which we conducted in Dubai Design Week as a part of Making Space, and which was attended by architects, interior designers, as well as students. And they sort of similar to the Fractals workshop, called the Digital Vernacular, in which we use vernacular material and local techniques which we learned from a Bedouin craftswoman who attended the workshop as well. And she taught the local techniques, and then the students came up with different configurations and different algorithms for putting it together. and these installations are now kept in the making space in Dubai Design District. Sometimes you have to make improbable connections. You don't know where you're going, you don't know what the answer will be, and something looks really absurd, but you have to do it anyway. Like Sherlock Holmes said, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. So in this project, we had to do a lot of improbable things, which we never imagined we would do. So we were commissioned to design a public art installation for an event called Street Nights in Dubai. So this was a kind of street art festival in which they wanted people to come and build the art installation. So it's not just an art installation which is for the public, but it's also by the public. So a lot of interlocking kind of structures have been done before, but what we tried to explore was a piece which is kind of asymmetric, and so that it grows in unpredictable manners, and it doesn't give you the same kind of repetitive outcome. At the same time, the people who would be attending the festival would be completely from many different backgrounds, many different age groups. So we didn't know where they would be coming from and what would their skill set be. So with the minimal amount of training, how can we get people to engage and sort of come together and build something along with other strangers whom they don't even know and never met before. So we did a few experiments with interlocking this and kind of growing it computationally. And then we came up with these laser cut pieces, which are all put together, and then people just pick them up and they can just put them together. So the major challenge in this project was that of budget. So the budget that they had allotted for us was, by Dubai standards, it was much too small. But being an Indian, it seemed really big to me. So what I did was I traveled to India. In 6 days, I came back, I got the pieces cut, I got them packed, and I took them along with me, paying for 35 kgs of excess baggage, and still did it in half the budget that was allotted. So this is how it kind of grew. People from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all age groups, grandmothers and grandsons working together, fathers and sons, little boys and big boys, everyone came together and they kind of built this installation unpredictably, because they didn't know what the outcome would be like, and they each added a bit of their creativity to it, and then this is how it grew over a period of 10 days. And since then we've conducted more workshops of this sort called crowdsourced. So it's a crowdsourced art installation which is designed and built by the public. So we've got a lot of such events happening in which children as well as their parents come together and they build the installations. And we have a lot of interest from the parents, and they want to take these pieces home and they want to kind of use it as a toy for their kids to play at home. So we've come up with something called flock. Not just this one shape, but many different shapes, which are all asymmetrical and which have the potential to grow. And we're going to be launching this month. And finally, sometimes you have to unearth what's already within. So sometimes the role of the designer is kind of minimized, and the designer or the architect has to take a step back and let the site dictate the project itself. So Michelangelo said, "The sculpture is already complete within the block of marble before I start my work. It's already there, I just have to chisel away the superfluous material." And that's exactly what we had to do in this project. This is the Golconda Fort in Hyderabad. It's more than 800 years old, and the rock formations that you see are more than 250 million years old. So you have our built heritage and you have our natural heritage in the same picture. This is the fort as seen from above, and this is our site that we were given. So we were asked to design a school, which was a charity school for children from disadvantaged backgrounds who were living within the walls of the Golconda Fort. So as you can see here, the Golconda Fort is not just a fort, but it has a settlement inside it. And it's a low-rise, high-density settlement, mostly residential, sometimes mixed use, and it consists of all courtyard houses, which all share walls with one another, and tiny winding lanes, because it's located on the top of a mountain. So Golconda itself means Shepherd's Hill in Telugu. So the lanes are all really narrow and steep. There are a lot of goats. So this is the site. We have the site which is kind of divided into two parts. One is a lower level and one is a higher level. So the site was actually, it's completely covered with sheetrock and not boulders. Boulders are kind of removable, but sheetrock is actually part of a mountain. So the entire site was in two levels with a difference of 20 feet in terms of height. And there was an existing courtyard house on the left side there, and there was an existing school building on the top. So the yellow part is the top and the white part is the bottom. And there was already an existing school building, which is just a large hall, a little bit bigger than this hall, which was just divided into partitions, and they were conducting classes on a very informal basis. And then there was a mosque in the same complex and a playground. And you can see this dotted yellow line. That was an existing retaining wall. So they had filled this kind of space, which was like a container for soil, and they had filled it to make it flat. Otherwise, it was completely undulating with lots of peaks and valleys. And on the other side, there was a courtyard house which we had to demolish to sort of get in there. So there's a road that meets, or a lane that meets the courtyard house at its entrance, which, if we consider that as 0 feet in height, it winds around the building, and there's another entrance from this side, which is at 20 feet. So this is the site as it was before construction. That's me. That's the existing courtyard house on the right side, where we had to carve out that space to enter, and it has shared walls with two other houses on both of its sides. So it's a narrow passageway of about 18 feet, and that's the existing retaining wall. So this is the lower part of the site, and the upper part of the site you can see in the next slide. So this is, we call this the lower ground, and this is the upper ground, which is 20 feet above that. So 2 floors above this. So you can see the retaining wall there. So this part was already, on the left side you see kind of a shed which was part of the school that was being run there. And then they had paved it as a playground. And then behind that, the existing courtyard house, which we would later demolish and create a passage through. The majestic Golconda Fort surrounds the site on all sides. And then in the distance you can see Lanko Hills and the Shai Tombs, because this is at one of the highest parts of the city. Again, the upper ground. So as you can see from any angle, wherever you stand and you turn, you will see the fort around you. So you can see the Golconda Fort there, the existing mosque and the existing schoolhouse. So this is how it was. The courtyard house, this road that winds around, and then at 20 feet you can enter again. The existing school and playground. And this was sort of filled in. So this is how they were running it before. It was a very informal kind of atmosphere. At the same time, it was makeshift. It wasn't very well planned, and it wasn't planned at all. It wasn't really designed, and it was kind of an uninspiring, cramped, crowded, and not very well lit space. Not at all how a school should be, but unfortunately, this is how generally charity schools are. So we wanted to create a space which was really bright and which would inspire the students and kind of bring their inner kind of talents out and make them enjoy going to school, which they were not enjoying at all at that point. Because on the site we found a lot of report cards which were just thrown. They wouldn't show it to their parents because they never attended the school actually. So it's it's a contrast. On the outside you can see that it's really bright. So the building on the right side is what we were looking at the interior of just now. So this is how it is on the inside, but on the outside it's completely in contrast. It's bright, it's green, there were a lot of trees there and a lot of sun and really nice kind of atmosphere, and the students were used to learning under the trees. So they would actually set up their entire classroom on days when the weather was good. They would set up their entire classroom under the tree and they would learn under the shade of the tree, as was done in traditional times. So we wanted to retain the trees, but also we wanted to retain this playground. So a playground of this size, which has actual soil, is very rare in an urban school. So nowadays, a lot of schools don't have playgrounds. They have to use the terrace as the playground, or they have to go somewhere else for sports, or they don't have any sports at all. So we wanted to retain the playground. At the same time, the students were kind of used to this ruggedness of the terrain. They were used to jumping around, climbing the rocks, climbing trees, playing with their goats. This is how, this was their culture, and this is something that we wanted to retain as well. And of course, the beautiful rock formations all around. So this is something that played a crucial role in the design, because we wanted to do the entire building without touching the rock or without having to break any of the rock or modify it. We wanted to keep the terrain as it is, and we wanted to preserve the rock as well. So this is how the school kind of just nested itself into the building, or into the site, or you could say it kind of grew out of the site. So you can see that the form of it was dictated completely by the site itself. So you've got where the courtyard house used to be, there's this narrow lower entrance, and then there's an upper entrance from the other side. And we retained the playground as it is. A few exploratory models. To understand the terrain, we had to do a lot of models. We had to do a lot of surveys as well. So the plan grows and shrinks as the rock kind of allows it to. So we don't call it ground floor, first floor, and second floor. We call it lower ground, middle ground, and upper ground, because the building touches the ground at every level. So you can actually access the ground at every level. So lower ground is very small because the rock itself was quite huge. And then the middle ground, the rock kind of comes into the building. And the upper ground is left really minimal. So it's a very typical plan. You've got one entrance from the left side there, 2 bathrooms, and then the center, there is this central series of atriums, a couple of atriums, inspired by the courtyard houses. So the courtyard house, which used to be in this space, got replaced by the school. So we kind of created an atrium in its place to give the feeling of the courtyard and kind of remind us. And then there is a central red staircase which sort of cuts through the entire school and connects all the layers, all the levels together, forming like a spine of the building. So on the upper floor, you again got classrooms on either side. The library has a very interesting story, which I'll tell you later. And then we joined the other side with the bridge. So you've got, on the far side, you've got the staff room and other staff kind of spaces which the students don't have to access. And on the upper floor, there's nothing but the playground and the roof of this. And they're going to be adding 3 more classes on this side later on. So this is the exploded view. As you can see, there is this central space where you have the spine, which is the red staircase going through. And we also took inspiration from the color palette of the surroundings. So most of the settlements that are there in India have a lot of really kitschy, kind of brightly colored houses, and they're all kind of user designed. And so we wanted to take the colors from this surrounding color palette. So we just took the primary colors and we applied them in a very controlled manner throughout the school. So we applied them in the doors, the windows, the staircase, the railings, the skylight. So this is the facade of the school. While we took the color palette, we kind of deliberately kept the facade really blank because we wanted to negate the colors which are surrounding this building so that it stands out as a school building. And so the scale remains the same because it's in the place of it's got the footprint of a courtyard house on this side, but the color kind of just is very subdued, subdued and negated. And a lot of things that we had to do, a lot of design that we had to be done while the construction was going on. Because as more of the excavation happened, we unearthed more and more rock, which was not surveyed before. So we had to respond to that. So as you can see, that's the entrance from the courtyard house where the courtyard house used to be. This is the rock, which you'll see again and again. It's a recurring kind of theme throughout the building. So this is, as you would see from the lower entrance, this is something that we visualized, and then under construction, and this is how it was when it was constructed. So a bright red staircase just going through. In contrast to the walls, which were just plastered and they remained not painted. The reason for that is not just to negate the color palette, but also for maintenance purposes, because this is a charity school. Not just the construction, but the entire life of the building would depend on individual donations or raising charitable donations. So in order to cut the costs of maintenance, we just kept the walls bare. So in place of the courtyard house, you've got this space which has this kind of cutout, giving the feeling of a courtyard. So the staircase kind of becomes a central spine where, which is a very vibrant space in terms of, students using it constantly and gathering. And you can see the rock on the right side, which has been retained, and it keeps popping up. So you will see a lot of different levels and steps in this school. The reason for that is because the rock changed heights, so we had to respond to that. So this is the staircase with the skylight above it, and the rock as seen from above. And you can see that the rock continues into the classrooms, and it pops up in many different places, sometimes outside the classrooms. The same rock is continuing there. And as I said, we had to do a lot of design while the construction was going on, so some of our drawings were directly on the rock itself or on the concrete itself. So this is a bridge that we added to connect to the staff room on the far end and create an atrium there to bring in light right into the heart of the building. So every part of the building is naturally lit and naturally ventilated. So there's two cutouts there, so you can actually get the sunlight right into the middle of the building. And the contrast between the pops of color and the cement walls. And the students are now attending classes. It's still the 7th grade, 8th, 9th and 10th. We'll be building the classrooms as they graduate next. And sometimes the students really surprise us because they use the spaces in ways that we had never intended or imagined. So they use, these spaces as a stage, a makeshift classroom. And now about the library. So this is the library which was being scrapped because they didn't have the budget to build the library. So that was one issue that we had. The second issue we had was they found, as they were building, we found this rock that was jutting out in the floor of the library. So we decided that we'd just cover it with steps and we create a very informal kind of library for these children who are used to jumping around and they're not used to the rigorous strictness of the classroom as in regular schools. So wherever you see steps is because of the rock, and the students are kind of using the space as their own. So then other classrooms will be coming up behind there. And we were able to retain the playground untouched. So it's only this part that's been a little bit constructed, and that becomes the stage. We've got classrooms under that, and the rest of it is completely soil. So that's a very valuable part of the school for us. The sports program and the open playground. So the students are now regularly attending classes. Sometimes boats are also attending. And so here you can see that we've created this perforated wall which was inspired by Jali to sort of bring in filtered light and cast interesting shadows. This was before the skylight was put in place. And students kind of like to hang out in the shade of that wall. This is after the skylight. And that tree, this was winter, so that tree is now in bloom. We also designed the branding and the logo. and I guess you can see this is the section of the school. So you've got the ground plane and you've got some parts above and some parts below. And of course the color palette is taken from the school itself. So about the library, which was about to be scrapped, we not only saved the space, the physical space, but we also started this campaign called Make Progress Possible in order to collect used books, used children's books, puzzles, toys, educational toys, and sports equipment. And then the first time that we ran this campaign, it was completely on social media, and we got a donation of over 200 books from different people. And then we started getting monetary donations as well. We started getting people wanting to donate sports equipment. So this sort of snowballed into a really big campaign, which is now conducted annually, every year during the month of Ramadan, which is the month of giving. So that's when we conduct this, and people are really willing to give at that time. And we also received donations from all over the world, not just in India. And we were able to, over the years, raise some funds that we donated to the school, not just for the construction, but also for midday meals, uniforms, books, etc. Excuse me. So this is how it was before, very uninspiring. This is how the classrooms are now. This was the old schoolhouse, which has now been converted into the nursery and the classroom block, kindergarten block. The view from above, as it was before, under construction. As you can see, the classes were going on while the construction was going on, so they were still using the building. And this is how it is today. It was featured in Indian Architect and Builder magazine. The best part about this is that because the building has so many passive cooling techniques and techniques that we did to control the budget, we were given the Silver Green Building Award by the Indian Green Building Council in 2018, last November. Previously, the school was a platinum winner in the Berger Architecture Ideas 3.0 by 48, and also a couple of other awards because of the school. This is just a video to show what we do.